back and find my email that has the roll call. Everybody's name. Let's see, where's that one? There it is.
You can do roll call if you'd rather.
Well, I have it if you want me to.
Whatever, you go ahead.
Okay. All right. Are we
We
on?
are live.
Are we live? Okay.
Yes, we are.
All right. Downtown Advisory Board for August 27th. Here we go. Joshua K. Not yet present. Is that right? Okay. Air interpreting. I'm here. Hillary Holman Kidd.
Here.
Vincenzo Maduri. Not present. Tyson Giza. Not here. Charles Weathers.
Present.
Brad Compton. Not here. Scott McLeod. And I think Scott said he wasn't going to be able to join us. I saw an email. Linda Nishioka.
Present.
Thank you. Dana Vuktavine.
Heidi ho.
Hello. Lori Miller. She's there. Oh, and here is Tyson. Hello, Tyson. Welcome.
So Lori has her microphone off.
Yeah. But she's here.
I'm here, but I'm going to keep it off because people barge in my office.
Sounds good. Okay. Before we approve the agenda, we need to add an item about the subcommittee on the UGM site. So if I could get a motion and second to do that.
I move that we add to the agenda the memo, I guess we're calling it a memo, about the UGM Saffron redevelopment opportunity.
Thank you, Linda.
Second.
Thank you, Hillary. Second. Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Okay, so now we can move forward to approve the agenda. I think we kind of just did, but let's go ahead and motion and
Move to approve the agenda as amended.
thank you, Dana.
I'll second.
Thank you, Linda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thumbs up. Okay, and what's next? Minutes? Anybody get a chance to look at those? If so, I just need a motion to approve.
I move that we approve the minutes from last meeting.
Thank you.
That was that July? No. That was-
June 25th.
Yes.
I will second that.
Thank you, Charles. Any further discussion? All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And those opposed? Okay. And now we're on to action items. Did we have any action items? I don't see any.
We do,
Oh, we do.
we do.
Okay.
So what I have before you today is a modification to the exception criteria for the capital improvement grant program. As you may recall, Aaron, you were on my subcommittee that worked on the exception criteria. And in addition to that, the original objectives from May 14th, we added exterior beautification was one of the modifications we made to that early on. But as I said in my memo, Kristen and I have recently been meeting with property owners or brokers that are representing large properties that when I tried to fit them into the current program guidelines, they would not be eligible to request an exception to the $300,000 maximum. In order to make them eligible, I'm proposing that we add another piece of the exception criteria for adaptive reuse buildings. That would be a building like Penny's or a building like Liberty Plaza or a building like Nordstrom's, where if that was one of the elements to what they were doing, they could then possibly fall within being eligible for getting more than the 300,000 maximum. I showed you information on the 6 that we've done exceptions to the program, and you can see our leveraging of private investment is significant. Our strategic plan shows a goal of 4-to-1, and certainly the $4 million that we've put into these 6 projects have way exceeded that leveraging goal. So again, I'm hoping that today you support me making a change and broadening the criteria for qualifying for an exception by adding the adaptive reuse one. I've also asked for some changes just in helping me administer the program. The original language was somewhat subjective, especially on blight. We struggled with that in the beginning when we added that one down. And over the years, I've had people apply thinking that if their building had been vacant for 3 months, they would qualify for blight. And so this makes it easier for me to answer that question, because 5 months of vacancy of a building that's completely fine, but you haven't had a tenant for 5 months was not what we were looking at to meet that criteria. At the time we put blight, the site where the former Marion Auto Garage that had been declared derelict had boarded up, people had gotten into it, it had squatters. That's really the example of what we thought was a blighted building. And then the other one is if somebody wants to try to qualify, saying that they're going to increase the tax increment equal to the grant amount over 7 to 10 years. This just says that third-party analysis would be required because that's what I'm asking for, if that's the one. And then I guess I broadened from affordable housing to just housing to make that easier to try to qualify a project for the exception.
So what
Any
I'm,
questions? Oh, yeah.
what's on the screen here? The proposed or no?
No, it's on
Okay.
the,
Just
it's
making
on the
sure.
back of the memo, right there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So these would be, some of these are
In-
replacing, some of them
Yeah,
are,
so basically,
adding.
yeah, so on
Yep.
like the
Got it.
first bullet, I'm just saying I'm adding third party
Mhm,
grant payback. So I'm adding third party to that sentence.
mhm. Okay.
May I ask who does that third-party grant analysis? Who does that?
Well, I think if I was being asked to do something like that, if I was a property owner, I would go to Marion County and get information. Somebody that would have credible data, to support that they're saying that it actually would, the property would increase in that value.
Would meet, yeah. I was thinking it would have to be somebody that would be able to look at the tax structure. That's all I was wondering.
Well, it would be difficult. We've talked about this quite a bit. If you have an existing building and you're doing a rehabilitation, the value does not go up significantly. But if you have a bare land, like what Charles is building on his, what his land value is versus what the value is going to be once the project's all done is significantly different.
Mhm.
I have a question about the third bullet point, adding the change to housing. Is there a specific percentage that you're looking for as a metric? Or if someone says, well, I put 1 unit, but the rest of the thing is all commercial, does that count?
So basically what I'm changing, Charles, is I'm removing the affordable piece. It's just housing.
It's
So you get,
affordable.
so instead of affordable housing, I'm just changing it to, you get additional credit for housing.
Okay.
But
And then you,
even so, I mean, but in a mixed use project, if there's just, again, one little part is housing, then that would count as the meeting the other criteria. You're not looking for a specific percentage of the project or anything?
I would say that if a property came in, and remember, they have to get through the first criteria too.
Mhm.
It would be, they're not going to be eligible for an exception if they're only doing one housing. It's not going to meet the rest of their criteria. It's not going to be large enough. It will just fall into the regular grant program.
Mhm.
I mean, I can't see somebody doing a $18 million office building and throwing in a housing unit. The
Okay.
numbers won't work.
Sure.
Trust me, we tried so many different scenarios when we put together the first program, trying to make sense of it. Any other questions?
Would this be retroactive to properties that have already gone through the process, but could now have qualified for maybe something greater?
No, basically what we've always done to maintain integrity is I've never come in and proposed to change if I have an application that I'm looking at, because we just wouldn't do that.
Mhm.
So I don't have any projects right now in the hopper asking for any exception. I'm basing it on what we're getting as far as feedback from property owners that we're meeting with. And because, again, like Penny's, we have more vacancy in large buildings. And with COVID, we don't know what the impact. So I'm trying to be ahead of. I have no idea if anybody will need this particular item that I'm adding. I just don't want to have somebody come in and have it not be eligible and then go in to have a change because I have something in front of me. That's not usually how we handle this. We try to have the program be in place and somebody can come in and apply against what we have. Because
Sure,
it doesn't seem fair if you did it the other way.
Yeah, I guess I meant more of anyone that had hit the cap already, and then now with these different guidelines, they said, oh, crud, if I had waited 6 months or 9 months or however long, but I understand.
No, but that was a good question.
Any hope of adding acquisition to the eligible costs?
You mean?
I'm sure that there's other problems with that, but when you talk about adaptive reuse, you know, wanting projects to hit this 3 million mark, sometimes if just the acquisition is so large, you know, that would get closer to that number fast. Or I know there's much more to it, and I'm new, but throwing it out.
So our philosophy or our policies on that has been, we want the end product. You know, we want whatever that building's going to be after somebody buys it and puts in a use that's going to be sustainable. So if we give money for somebody to buy something and then it just sits there, our goal has always been to put money in to get that reuse, that those project costs done once the building is owned by somebody. You know, I mean, we want the end product. We want to see something happen with it, not necessarily help buy it.
Sure.
So
Sometimes
it's just like refinancing has never been eligible. You know, we're not going to take, you know, our money and replace a bank's debt. Acquisition hasn't been eligible from the get-go.
right. I just wonder if it could be part of a, you know, a construction program from a bank, of course. You know, for instance, I think of a fancy building on Court Street that might be far underused at the moment. It's so expensive to acquire, but doesn't need a whole ton after that. If the two could be put together, then it would be more palatable for someone to be able to do that. But yeah, Josh, want to chime in and say more money to buy stuff makes more people buy stuff?
Yeah, I'm just thinking about if you put that into an acquisition, and like Cherie gave the illustration of it sitting there and the improvements are not made, then the city is they're kind of in a conundrum where they're, what's their recourse? And
Totally, yeah. I mean, I'd put a condition of if you don't do this work, you got to pay it back.
Yeah, I see the logic there, but to me, it kind of creates a, I don't know, is kind of the opposite effect than on someone who already owns a building. They're being penalized then because they already own the building.
No, they can meet it for all these things that are already proposed. This would just open it to a wider pool of folks.
Yeah,
I guess if we're talking about COVID and, you know, the onslaught of all that's going to entail with vacancies and things, not often are property owners willing to take a huge hit, and they might let it sit for 4 years instead of 5. And it would still, you know, hurt the vitality of downtown. But if it were a program that could accommodate folks that want to take a risk on this property and do the rehab to make it, you know, more appropriate for the whatever the new world uses are after COVID ends, it would, in my mind, on the back of the cocktail napkin, get there faster if acquisition could be a part of that calculation.
I guess I would go to best practices in other urban renewal areas. I mean, is that a common practice elsewhere?
Acquisition is eligible in North Gateway with their grant program,
Okay.
a different urban renewal area, a different types of properties, smaller types of properties, and it is eligible. I administered that grant program years ago, and I didn't have any project that got a grant for acquisition. Everybody owned their property. And I'm not close enough to it now to know if, since I did it, if the person administering the grant program now has done a grant for acquisition. I guess for me, Charles, it's, you know, you have sources and uses. So you're going to have equity, you're going to have bank financing, and then, you know, you'll have the grant. So it's just a matter of you're solving for a number. Our piece just doesn't go for that portion of the project. I mean, the bank is still going to get the benefit. The property owner is still going to get the benefit. It's just not going to be upfront. Again, we've never done pre-development either, because the risk was always if we do pre-development and the project never goes through, we don't get the project that we wanted. And because that used to come up a lot. I want money to do my, you know, due diligence. I want money, you know, to determine if I want to buy this property and do something. And we, you know, we're better suited and our money needs to be used for a project. And so we've always focused on the project. So I don't see where, I mean, the difference is, when do I get the money, at what part of a project? We've always just wanted to be in the part where it was actually going to result in something being accomplished, not up front with the acquisition. Am I making sense?
No, I understand what you're
Okay.
saying. Yeah, I see both sides of the coin. I'm just asking the question for the adventurous folk out there that might need a little help getting across that. I guess I look at it instead as being the first draw just happens at closing, not as the work starts. But yeah, I appreciate the discussion.
if we wanted to explore ideas
The
like
only
that.
thing
sure.
I'm wondering is,
Oh, go ahead,
go
Linda.
ahead, Aaron. No, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, if we wanted to further explore ideas like that, where there might need to be a little more, I don't know. I don't want to ask staff to do work, but on the other hand, when we bring up an idea like this, Cherie, is it something that, you know, you can kind of take back to Kristen and kind of talk about conversationally here and there, and then let us know at our next meeting, you know, kind of what the thought is, as opposed to us just kind of debating something here where we're not really, we don't really have all of the information and resources we would need to sort of make a broad decision like that in just a, you know, short discussion.
Absolutely. I mean, we can, Anita? Anita,
Yes,
if I want to, if I want to pull my staff report that ties to this action today from the
Yes.
date I can just, I don't know where it is in the process to be able to do that. Can I do that?
we can still do that.
Okay, so Aaron, what I can do is I'll just not move this forward if that's the board's preference. Again, we're talking about an action item, so you'll have to take a vote. If you
Mhm.
vote that you want to not move this forward at this time and you want to have more discussion on it and look at if there's something else you want changed or added or taken away, we can do that at another meeting.
Well, I guess I don't want to slow things down too much. Is this this is something that needs to get approved by council?
Yes, by the agency board.
Right. So do you see any drawbacks to us slowing this down another month or so? I mean, you
No,
don't have any pending applications coming in that would, okay. So you don't
No.
have any, Cherie, you don't have any heartburn if we say, could we maybe think about this for at least one more meeting? Not that we're against what you've
Yeah.
proposed, but just, we'd like to explore maybe more and more creative ways to try to spur redevelopment downtown.
absolutely.
Okay.
What are we
I
asking
guess-
staff to bring back then, Aaron?
Well, I think to Josh's point, it's really a simple question. It might be answered in just a brief conversation, but what are other URAs doing, not just in Salem, but again, we're not asking you to go spend a bunch of hours of staff time researching, but more like, you and Kristen having a conversation maybe and just kind of reporting back to us that, maybe 3 pros and 2 cons or whatever, this idea of adding property acquisition as another, I guess, eligible reimbursement in the capital improvement program.
I would be happy to look at what other communities that do URA, how they
Mhm.
how they put their monies out. I know when I worked in Portland, a big tool that PDC used when I was there was they would lease space. So it wasn't so much tax increment money, but one of the roles that they played was if they were wanting to incentivize somebody to do, I guess it's how the Pearl became. We moved, I don't know how many times, our office space every 5 years because we would go in and we would master lease space in order for a building owner to get financing, a big piece of it. And so they did that all over the place in the Pearl to try to jumpstart with the Menashes who own property there to try to get those buildings done. That isn't I mean, I will look and see what I can come back to you with, but sometimes it depends on the size of the community and their willingness to take different risks. I mean, we put up good faith and credit on a lot of bonds when I work in Portland. That is not something that the city does here. So there are tools that other communities use. It just, it's based on a lot of other policies that they have too. But I'll see if I can find just something like acquisition or something a little bit. I'll just look at what's eligible and what's not and bring it back to you. Again, acquisition's eligible in another URA in Salem. But when they created that grant program, that was a need there at that time. And that's why it became part of what was eligible. So that's why we can talk about it. Does that sound good?
Sounds great. I
Okay.
think like you said, if there's no rush to get this approved and it's just as easy, to spend a little more time thinking and trying to get creative. I mean, to the points of what a couple of people have said, the current situation, we need to be creative. So, Linda, did you
Well,
have another?
I was going to ask the question, if there's some way that we could possibly see if there's stakeholders that would be willing to have funds available for someone wanting to take on a project, if there's any opportunities there, and then those stakeholders could get a small return and by a certain point, and then the person doing the project would move forward after 5 or 10 years, something to that effect.
So can you give me a little bit more information about what you're talking about, Linda? Because as you know, our money has limits to what it can be used for.
I
Has
was
to be something in our plan.
right.
And it has to be a capital cost. Can't be maintenance or repair. We can't pay a payment, we can't pay a rent payment. We can't pay somebody's mortgage payment. So when
No,
you
I
say a
was thinking-
stakeholder,
Yeah, no, I was thinking more in terms of if there's any financial backers for someone that wanted to acquire a property and then use the grant money that they could apply for, but they basically are just asking, sort of like a private bank, can you help me support this? Can you help me buy this property? If the numbers look like they're working out, then they could get a small return on that investment, with the person that's doing the project eventually paying them back and with a little bit of interest. I was just wondering if there's some way that we might see if there's any people interested in helping support others do a project. Would be outside. It would be outside of the city, really. It's not something that the city would be part of. It would be private investors.
oh, okay, so basically somebody that wants to do a project in downtown, doesn't have the financial wherewithal to do it and doesn't want to have 100% of the debt be through a financial institution. And so there's investors
Yes.
well, we certainly have people in the downtown that do that for others. So then it's just a matter of connecting people with those people. Yes, that is interesting. I've never played that role, but it is
sounds-
out there.
The idea almost is like a portal or you go to this portal and it has the development projects who are looking for investors, and then
Mhm.
so it maybe your concept is the city playing this role of connecting.
Connecting the two. Yeah.
That's a interesting idea. I don't know.
Mhm.
I don't know how that could work, but
It's a really innovative idea. It sounds like a business, actually.
yeah.
Like crowdsourcing.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's pretty common in other municipalities. Tenants in common, TICs, a little piece of the pie. And if it's what gets the program or project out of the ground, that's a good thing. Where my head keeps going to when we talk about this, I was a little bit late to the party on the conversation, is, staff's obviously put a lot of work into this and identifying what's in here. And there was clearly, I'm sure that there was a longer list that maybe got cut down. And it would be really helpful when we talk about this more to have that input, because you could count the number of properties in downtown Salem that really are great indicators on one hand, and maybe two hands and your toes if you really want to identify the properties in the downtown core, the riverfront downtown, that are ripe for redevelopment. And so it's almost like you want to game plan it. You want to have the illustrations out for the properties that are the biggest priorities and kind of create I'm not advocating for anything new, but I've heard of some other ideas here on this alone that maybe should be included. that are not being. And I hate to get too specific, you want to keep it broad, but the goals of downtown are to revitalize, and to do that, we need to take these blighted buildings or these vacant buildings and help them. So it'd almost be great to be able to customize some of these new provisions or requirements or criteria for seemingly the obvious properties that should be redeveloped. And then again, I also don't know how this mixes in, but you have the UGM property, which was just procured by the city, and we have the eventual RFP coming, at least we're thinking that in that way. How do these new criteria requirements fit in with going out for the RFP for that project? And I know it's a ways out, but we got to be thinking of that too.
It's on the agenda. We got added right before you jumped on.
Late to the party.
You're
Oh, you accidentally muted yourself, Aaron.
Josh is just giving us a segue. Sorry.
Unintentional.
I move
No, I
we
think-
table this to a future meeting.
I said-
Agreed. Okay, moved in second, and I would just respond to Josh a little bit and say, I think Cherie mentioned it, but a few of us were part of creating this exception criteria a while ago, and the intent was to do the things exactly what you're talking about, and also to set it up in a way that provided flexibility, so that flexibility on the city's side as far as approving. So, and this is even making it more flexible. At the time, I think affordable housing was something that was, I mean, I'll just say, I think it was a little bit political, but I was just sort of like a desire to have affordable housing. I think that still exists, but Cherie's proposal here is making it even more flexible. And I think to your point, Josh, like keeping the list shorter but broad provides that flexibility so that, you know, when we, oh, sorry. Anyway, so just to answer that question, any other discussion before we vote to table this? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so we're gonna move on. Let's see here, pulling up my agenda. There we go. Next thing is information reports. Downtown Cafe Dining Program. Should I share my screen? Let's see here. So, oh, that's the saffron thing. Okay, here we go. Cherie, are you going to tell us about the dining program? Is that?
We can do this two ways. I can briefly go over it for you, or since you've had it and read it, if anybody has any questions, I will tell you that since I've done this, I've now been working on a cafe seating platform program where it would be, you know, a platform, not just off street, taking parking spaces off street, something that, you know, would go through and have to meet, you know, public works requirements for ease of cleaning around it. And if you're going to have a railing, height requirements that provide the visibility, things that aren't required right now because people are just using the parking spaces on street. But a platform can be a lot better looking, obviously at the same level of the sidewalk, something that you could leave up year round. So I'm working on, you know, no sooner do I get this done, I'm now working on more of a platform. And we had talked about parklets with our streetscape design plan. So I was just circling back and sharing this information with you. Anybody have any questions?
What is the, I mean, is this heading in the direction of being more open-ended and flexible. So, you know, one restaurant might make something that's really, really nice and covered or whatnot, and then another one might just be the asphalt with picnic tables on it. I mean, what's the, or is it headed in more of a, you know, sort of like a design review direction where there's going to be,
Well, building and safety, you know, defers to Public Works to deal with anything on the sidewalk and in the street. However, we have outreach to community development to get their thoughts. I've looked at, Portland has a program. I've looked at what they require on an annual basis, and they have quite a bit of design as part of theirs. Aaron, right down to a list of firms that can provide consulting services on the platform. Obviously, it's in its infancy, but you know, the materials have to withstand, you know, 200 pounds of weight. You know, they have to adhere in a certain way. I mean, it's pretty specific, the requirements, but not so much as far as how you might put your seating, how your walls might look. You can't have, obviously, any type of construction on it, like a covering. Obviously, you could have a, you know, an umbrella or something, but we just think that people are going to want this. We don't know when they're going to change the regulations for the distancing requirements. And we've had businesses outreach to us about they would like to try a parklet. They would like an opportunity to do that. And so we're trying to figure out a way to get a pilot to try to test that and work through some bugs. But this kind of was the beginning of how that's being developed. I'll keep you posted.
I want to commend you guys for jumping right on this. Restaurants are struggling right now, and this was so important to get done quickly. So awesome job.
Thank you.
you're here.
So that's all I
Okay.
have on that.
Okay. Back up to the agenda. Yeah, I've been in a few cities now around Oregon, and they're everywhere in all the downtowns. Yeah, and quite a variety even within each city, like some that are really, really, really nice. And then some that are just literally just picnic tables on the side, on the street. But Hood River has them, Corvallis, Sisters Bend. Yeah. Okay, let's see, our Salem update.
I just wanted you to know that it's moving forward and they have some draft policies that they're working on, and I'll keep you posted in regards to what is coming out of their outreach and when things go to council. I just know it's a big project for community development, and I just want to keep it in front of you.
Okay, thanks.
And Eunice will probably come back and give a presentation
Mhm.
when she's a little bit further along in developing her policies.
Great. Okay, what's happening downtown?
Well, what's happening is that Kristen and I have a meeting with the Nordstrom building owner. So I'm hoping maybe something will come out of that. We've also, again, like I shared, have had some meetings with property owners who have vacant buildings, trying to get a sense of what their plans might be, what their challenges are, and if there's any role that we can play that we're not aware of right now.
Can you-
I had a
Sorry.
meeting with Liberty Plaza, property owner representative this week. So I feel good about that. However, at the same time, you know, Penny's, well, Aaron, you probably know more than I do, you know, Penny's ownership is challenged and they still have time on their lease, and so not exactly sure how that's all gonna play out. So a lot of positive things. And I think, if you look at the police facility, it's supposed to be done in October, and UGM has its steel frame going up, and Linda's building has a masonry going on. It looks fabulous. So there is a lot, and MAPS Credit Union, is under construction. We do have a lot of private investment coming into the community right now, but then at the same time, we have some businesses closing, which is disappointing. So it's just an interesting time for downtown right now.
Can you tell us, anything about your meeting with the Nordstrom property owner? Is it just a sit
It's
down to
coming up.
say?
It's coming
Why-
up. I haven't had it. Yeah.
Well, I know, but what is the purpose of the meet? Are you talking, did you initiate the meeting? Are they,
Well,
just
no,
that
that's-
you're having a
that's-
meeting, what do you mean?
Yeah,
Meeting
no,
about what?
we were invited to a meeting. A couple, I think in the beginning of August, the property owner outreached to me asking for information as to how many housing units were in downtown, what's
okay.
going on, but they didn't say what they were doing. But I shared as much as I could with them, giving them the housing analysis, giving them everything that I could think of but they didn't say what they were going to be using it for. The meeting that Kristen and I are invited to is being hosted by Sedcor.
Oh, okay. Okay, cool. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else have anything to add or any questions for Cherie?
I did want to let you know that in case somebody asked about the bike share program that was on the sidewalks, there was a couple of different locations where there were bikes that you could use. Zagster is who was behind that and who had an agreement with the city. They ceased their operations in Oregon. And so during the early piece of the pandemic, so Public Works is working with Ride Salem on a new agreement. Sometimes people ask you all questions, and I thought that might be one that somebody might ask you, since they're not there anymore. There's some around transit, but there isn't any on the sidewalks like there used to be.
Shirley, what's going on with the hotel, the Holman Hotel?
Still moving forward. They have their plans in for review. I am very excited about that. Their plans are in for review. They went out for comment to different staff within the city. So it's moving forward.
Okay, because it's just growing weeds, so I thought there might be a problem.
When you say in for review, do you mean for building permit?
Yes.
Okay, cool, great.
Cherie, I know the Salem Kaiser Education Foundation, they poured a bunch of money into that building in downtown on commercial. And I know it's pending sale. Do you have any insight you can share on that?
Well, that's the last time I'm going to see you on the sidewalk.
Sorry, I needed a coffee from Isaac. Sorry.
This is it. Yeah. I had a meeting. Tyson, we ran into each other on the sidewalk right in front of Skiff. I had a meeting yesterday with the person who's probably buying that building, and I'm thrilled because it hasn't been on the market that long, and the renovations are very nice that was done, but they're looking at maybe doing something off the alley to create an entrance off of the alley, because that building has a stairwell in the back closer to the alley than in the front, and that would open up space availability and access a lot easier. So I do not know this particular person who's buying the building, but he was very nice, and I'm just thrilled that they'll buy it and love it. And he's already talking about, he didn't say who, but he said he looks like he has tenants for the building, which is even better. So yeah, that's all I got out of the meeting yesterday. I assume that they'll probably come in for a grant to do the alley improvements.
That's good.
Anybody else want to take one of my fingernails off? I don't know anything.
I'm good. I'll pass.
Can you
Okay,
do the sub, can you do the subcommittee now?
Moving on to the subcommittee on the UGM Saffron site. So you guys have been working and you've got some ideas, and what are we doing? You want some feedback, or are we gonna brainstorm some ideas? I can pull up can everyone see that?
Yes.
Is my screen sharing the UGM? Okay, there we go.
So I just want to say how grateful I am to Tyson and Linda for giving up their time and for, spending it with me. We've had lots of great discussion. I think the one thing that we continually go back to is that we don't want to dictate really anything. We want to make sure that we capture ideas that we may not even be able to think of. At the same time, trying to hit some of the goals that we have. But I'm going to let Tyson and Linda talk you through this. We do want, and you can do this a couple of different ways. I've queued up kind of a way for you to take a look at some of these things to help us try to get some priorities. You can fill it out and scan it back and send it to me, but they can kind of walk you through how we landed on the ones that are, yep, right there.
I'll go ahead. So this is a new experience for me, but Linda, Sheree, and I have met twice before this meeting and discussed some RFPs in the past in Salem and the process that took place in order to get an RFP out. And there were a few different ways they've done it in the past. A few different ways is they have done it in phases where they have basically limited down the pool of potential developers or investors they want to choose from, or they've just left the web wide open per se. But I guess that would be something to discuss. And through our discussions, we've come up with this list where we have asked the entire board to come up and rank the priorities, basically. So the first one would be design creativity, where the Saffron UGM site is located, has a ton of visibility. It's outside the downtown historic district, which has much more strict guidelines when it comes to developing. So how much weight do we want to place on a building that's more pleasing to the eye versus something that's more basic and not so pleasing to the eye? So that'd be the first one. I don't know if you have anything to chime in, Linda.
No, you're doing great. I think that, again, we were just trying to get a feel for allowing the developer to be creative and not restricting possibilities. And so, again, we're just wanting to see how these should be weighted and are the list that we've come up with.
So I don't know, Sheree, do we want to go through these one by one and just talk amongst as a group, or are you asking each person to rank these individually, and then maybe next meeting we can take a look at collectively as a group what we weighed to be our top priorities?
I think I was thinking of both, actually, Tyson and Linda. I was thinking that you could do what you're doing, Tyson, kind of go down each of the items here, possibly in the midst of that conversation, somebody has something they want to add, we can all add it. And then also offline, if you don't feel comfortable making it clear to us today which one of these rises up and what you think we should prioritize as far as how we evaluate it at some future date, proposals that come in, doing it offline, that way you can just send them to me and I can take it back to the subcommittee. What we have to keep in mind is that we'll do a solicitation and we'll say, this is what we're looking for, but part of that also is how you score and how somebody then rises to the top. And so that's part of what we're looking at too, because when you put together these requests for proposals, you have to tell the proposer how it's going to be scored, because you have to have integrity in the process. And so part of what we're doing here is trying to get a sense of how certain things might be ranked based on how you look at them as far as the importance of that redevelopment opportunity. So it's kind of like if you have 3 projects in front of you, and do you care if one is 40 million and one is 2 million? Does that make a difference to you? You have 3 projects in front of you, and one of them is proposing a mix of uses, housing. The 2 others are not. Is housing something different than just straight commercial? Those at some point, that's how it's going to, shake out, because all things equal, what are the things that will differentiate one from another? That's what we're trying to get from you without being restrictive in how we ask people to submit proposals. Take it away, Tyson.
Yeah, so just continuing going down the list, a big one that we had discussed in our prior meetings was the size, the footprint of the redevelopment. Would we like to accept proposals that is only for a portion of the site, or do we want the proposals to reflect the entirety of the site as it is now? Type of uses, like Sheree touched on, do we want to emphasize any particular type of use, for example, housing, or do we just want to leave that broad? Another big one, the type of city incentives requested. Do we want to offer tax breaks, or do we want this to be a property that is going to generate tax revenue? The experience qualifications of the development team. I think we should require any type of proposer or proposal to tell us what other projects they've done, to know if they have the credibility to pursue this type of project. That's basically what that's touching on, but how high we want to rank that in importance, that's what we'd like to discuss. Does anyone have anything to chime in so far?
So it sounds like on the dollar amount, number, and type of city incentives requested. So am I reading this right? The thinking right now is to leave that open-ended and leave it to the proposer to come up with their requests. And so that would just literally just be another item that you weigh proposals against each other, as opposed to the other way around, where you send out the RFP and you say, here's the things we want, and here are the incentives we're offering. I guess I'm not clear what that item is.
I can speak to that one because I've had a chance to talk to Kristen. Her preference would be that a developer says what they want from us. However,
Okay.
we would include in the information with our proposal what our incentives are.
Mhm.
We would say we have a grant, we have blah, we have multi-unit tax incentives, whatever we can put there, we will say, but they can
Okay.
come to us is more of
Yeah.
what she's asking for. but good
Yeah,
question.
I like that. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going
And
through,
then, go ahead.
going through this process right now with the YMCA for our corner lease space. And the more you ask questions, the more these just the layers get peeled back, because like you said, you want to have integrity in the process, Cherie, and you want to make sure it's equitable. And when people, ultimately there can only be one, or maybe in this case, it's just a big block of clay right now. There could be multiple if you wanted to take it apart. But some people are going to get denied, and they need to know what the objective criteria is on why they were denied. And you bring that on. I mean, that's the unique part of this. The city has purchased this property and then control this process. And you don't want it to take too long, but you sure as heck better be equitable and giving everybody a fair shot. So to do this right, and I can appreciate you, Linda and Tyson and Cherie, sitting down and taking the time to go over this, but you can make this a bigger deal than it is, or I think it's just, but this is critical. I mean, this is one of the biggest sites in downtown and the biggest opportunity for a spark of redevelopment, a new era of it. So I can appreciate you guys going through it. I mean, all of these should be ranked. I mean, all of these are a priority. Depending on who you're talking to, they might have a different opinion on where it should be ranked, whether it's job creation or tax revenue or design creativity, because you want it to look beautiful. Of course, coming across the bridge, looking down on it. I'm pontificating now, but this is a monumental task.
Well, Josh, you're absolutely correct in that, unfortunately, when you build these, you're looking for your ability to be able to answer the question, why one was chosen over another one. With the exception of design creativity, which is subjective,
right?
The majority of these are black and white, are easier to state, you felt you were in it or you were out of it, and that's why, yours wasn't selected. I know with the convention center, I was just newly hired when that was getting underway. The design of the convention center was like the biggest topic everybody was talking about in downtown. If I brought 50 people in here, 20 would like it and 30 people would hate it because it didn't fit into the historic district. It was something new and very modern. But the mayor at that time, was really pushed to have something unique for that design, but it is very subjective when it comes to that particular line item. That's the one that's most subjective, for sure.
I would argue for maybe, I don't know if it's parentheses or comma, quality of materials and quality of construction or something like that, because I think, being in the design world myself and having preferences about design in the subjective realm, Owen, can you hold on for a second? Oh, sorry. I think quality of materials is maybe as important or more important, and that can be subjective or argued, but whether it's a brick building or a glass building, they could both look terrible if it's done poorly and with fake brick or like wallpaper versus what Linda's doing, and even if you like modern glass buildings, a building done in all brick in a historic style done with quality materials will hold up over time and will be worth more on that return of investment scenario. I guess even within that design word, there are a lot of other sort of long-term implications that are very important for downtown. And so I guess I'm saying maybe there is a way to sort of make design creativity a little bit more objective in terms of saying, here are some of the things we're looking for. We're looking for quality materials. We're looking for, something that complements its surroundings. So that's leaving it pretty open, but it's also giving you the out to say, look, this giant concrete parking structure with, doesn't complement that, hypothetical, something that looks really, really terrible, you could say there's maybe some objective of ways to start laying some of that out. So
So
I'm getting
Aaron-
long-winded here.
Aaron and all, Tyson was great, and he brought up the environmental responsibility and green building. So do you feel that that could be tied with design creativity in the sense of materials, or do you feel that they should be separate?
Yeah, I think it's I think environmental responsibility green building, part of that is, part of sustainability is building something that will last. And that doesn't need to be renovated every 20 years. That's actually a big part of sustainability. So yeah, I think you could definitely kind of integrate those two and kind of build a sort of an item on the ranking priorities that is all in that sort of design realm. Really what you're doing though is you're putting an onus on that each proposer to really make a case
Yes.
and to really spend some time on the front end developing their concept so that we know what we're getting.
Yeah.
So I guess at the end of the day, that's really, the objective of this is not just to get to have a chance to, interject our opinion about design. That's not really the point. The point is that we're putting the onus on them to put together a well thought out, creative, well-designed presentation. And so that in and of itself can help you weed out the less qualified developer who doesn't have the capability to do that. And so I think it's that's a good path.
Another thing I'm not seeing on here, maybe it can be encapsulated under total cost of project, but that would be the funding mechanism for the developer. Because if I'm not mistaken, the city owns this outright, or the Urban Renewal Agency owns this property. Is that correct?
We currently own the buildings that Saffron owned, and we'll take ownership of, yes, we will own them. Your Riverfront Urban Renewal budget is paying for them. So we will own the UGM building as soon as they have their new facility built and they've moved out.
Okay.
But the city doesn't own everything on that block. And that was also something in our discussion about, do we go to some of those property owners and talk to them if a project became such that it would be nice if some of those properties were available?
It's the two, right? The Shemeketa in front, and then the newer condominium building right adjacent to it.
No, the ABC Music is owned by the Chasmans, and Larry Emerson owns the building that used to have the dental office and office. The condo, the condo wouldn't be in the mixed, but what Linda is saying is, you can, how does that play into what you're thinking? Somebody like Aaron's talking about, we put the burden of the presentation on the developer, and he comes in and he says, oh, hey, and by the way, I have a very preliminary site control option on ABC Music and the Larry Emerson's property, because I think my proposal, is going to be bigger and better with your properties and those two added. Or does that matter?
Mhm.
Okay.
We had a lot of thoughts swirling.
Oh, trust me.
I can imagine. The developer that's going to be attracted to a project of this scale, the way I'm seeing it in my head, is I would presumably be very well qualified and maybe well capitalized, maybe not. But the city, is the goal of the city to just be cashed out for what they put into this? Or is there any incentive on the city to have a return on their investment? Or is it more so focused on what is built? Because the city's in a unique position in that they have full control of the property. And for some developers, that might be an advantage to have the city partake in some of the financial model that could be perceived.
I am unaware in Salem of any proposal that we've done where that has been an element of it. That's not the case, again, when I worked in Portland. But that is certainly how it's been here, because we had a different market. So basically, our contribution has been in how we, on the price of the land, and obviously the rest of our financial incentives that we have available, but we haven't ever joint ventured. We haven't ever, done some type of a contract where you could pay it over time. But again, I don't think any of that is something that somebody couldn't propose to us, just like, financing the SDCs. I just think it's a matter of, it needs to make sense though, to the need of it. It's just like when we do the exceptions for the grants, there needs to be something that is behind why you're asking for what you're asking for. If you're unable, if the rents are low here, if you're using, you're building it with, materials that are just, very sustainable, but not really feasible financially, but you think that that's the best thing to do. I mean, I think it's just that story that the developer is going to be giving to us too, as to why they're requesting the modeling or the structure or whatever it is from us that they think they need to do the project. That's been the tough part of the conversation, because we have some things that they have to bring to the table, but we don't want to be restrictive and try to answer all their questions up front, because we don't want to minimize what somebody might be coming in with. That's been our biggest challenge, right? It's like we want this to throw a net and get the most interesting things that we can get, but having somebody that has experience, a resume with their team, somebody who's done something similar size to this, to Joshua's point, somebody that if they've done something similar size probably has the ability financially to move it forward. That's a given, period. So some of these things are black and white. You have to be qualified.
Right. What is the timeline for this in an ideal world? Seeing as we can dial in the RFP, is this a 3-year, 4-year, 5-year?
No, I checked with UGM as to when they feel that they're going to have their building complete and be out of this building. So it looks like, probably summer of 2021. And so our goal, because just this piece of what we're doing, everything seems to take so long. We want to make sure that we get the body of the RFP done. If we have to take elements of it to the agency board before we put it in there, we need to build in time for that. And then once we take site control, these usually, and again, especially, if we're wanting to give them an opportunity to really give us good proposals, then you have to give them a certain amount of time to prepare their responses, which could be, 3 or 4 months. I don't know. I mean, I'm not a developer, but I think asking for somebody to turn something around in 30 days, you probably wouldn't get the quality of a response.
Right.
that we're looking for. So we want to be ready to go as soon as we have site control.
I like that you're running it parallel to them moving out. That's smart.
But the thought is it isn't to release the RFP until the site is under control. And that I think that makes sense. But there, is that what you're saying, Sheree?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I can see wisdom in that. We could release it before that, but that makes sense.
Well, I think the other thing that is in the back of probably most of our minds is if we were doing it today, there's challenges for somebody that may not be there in 2021 too. We're in this very strange transition because of COVID, and we're not out of that. We don't know what all of that, how that's going to impact us. You know, we might capture the interests of somebody a little bit different if we were at a better place than looking like we're not at that good place. And we also have to deal with when the expiration of the ordinance happens again in 2021 for the homeless, you know, we need to be thinking how that might impact downtown again. So having it be next late spring, summer will give us a chance to get more history on how this is all going to play out too.
So back to the group, Tyson has reviewed the information. We've pretty much talked about each of the items. Would you all like to consider this and then think about what types of ranking you would like to give each of the items? Or do you have any other questions or thoughts on it at this moment?
I would so move that you send it out for everybody to submit their own individual ranks.
I think that makes sense. And maybe at our next meeting have a discussion where we talk about those rankings, and before we just sort of take like, oh, you know, 8 people ranked relationship to surrounding uses as highest, so that ends up getting the highest. Well, we might want to have a discussion about it first, just to make sure we're all actually thinking what we ranked. And I don't know. Does that sound?
Well, also think about inclusion or not just ranking. You know, is this something that is in there? Not what a score is going to be for it. Let's just start simple and say, you know, is this something that we want in there, period, or not? You know, do we want design creativity in there? Yes. Okay. Then, you know, of all the things, maybe where do you see that falling as far as importance? I think having the information on should it be in or not. Again, some things are a given. You have to be qualified. We need to understand your timeline for completion, but something like job creation, that might be, hey, that's important, but we're not necessarily thinking it should be something that has a weighted piece in it, but we want to have that. We want to somehow state that is important to us. So somebody may put that in, but it's not going to be something that is going to say you're in, you're out. You know, we want to get that feedback too.
Well, and like something like leverage URA funds, I mean, that's kind of also the same as total cost of the project and square foot or size of the redevelopment. I mean, they're kind of the same thing, right? Like if someone's just proposes a single family home, then that might be great, but it's not going to be it's not really going to leverage our funds the way a really large development would. So I don't know, I guess I'm saying that's obviously important, leveraging our funding. But those other items like total cost of the project and size are almost in line with that. So I don't know, they might be a little bit redundant or similar to what we were talking about, design creativity and or green building. I mean, maybe we can combine some of these. And
Yes, I think that makes sense too. But Aaron, on the one, what I'm thinking is, so you have two projects proposing very similar kind of elements.
mhm,
They're both 32 million.
okay,
One says, hey, I'll pay you $3 million. I want the 10-year tax exemption,
mhm, mhm,
which is worth $1.5 million. I want your $749,000 capital improvement grant. I want
Mhm.
financing for my SDCs.
mhm,
I want you to demo the building, another $1 million. I don't know, I'm guessing here. So when you
Right.
look at leverage, there's just, we
Mhm,
typically
mhm.
look at it, our grant against total project cost. And the other
Yeah.
$32 million one says, hey, I won't pay you $3 million for the site. I'll pay you $1 million for the site. I
Mhm.
want, so I could get 2 million on the other one more, but they're asking for, 3 million in other offsets.
Right.
And I'll take your capital grant and that's it.
Yeah.
They're both the
Okay,
same
I hear you.
size. I mean,
Mhm,
how
mhm.
is that something that matters?
Okay, I hear you.
Yeah, that's all.
Okay, so you want each of us to just kind of like maybe put comments on here,
Love it. Yep.
strike things that we don't like or
Mhm.
suggest combinations, and then you want us to just rank the five highest, or not
Yeah.
do that for now.
You don't have to do, I think the comments, you don't have to rank it.
Importance 1 to 5.
Yeah, I mean, it's like 1 to 5, 5 being you like it the
Mhm.
best.
Okay,
There, again, this is just a tool for us to have a discussion.
Yeah,
We
okay.
have to start someplace.
sure. Okay, any other thoughts then before we take our homework and call it a day?
Can I give you a deadline for it so that I can have another subcommittee meeting before our next meeting?
Okay,
Yeah.
Okay, so our next meeting, if we have one in September, would be the 25th.
Mhm.
And so
No, 25th is a Friday.
24th, sorry, I'm looking weird at a calendar here. So could I have them by Friday the 4th?
Basically a week from now. That's
Yes.
fine with me.
Okay. I know the holiday's coming, but that would give me a chance to organize the next meeting with Tyson and Lisa and Linda.
Sounds good. Is everybody all right with that?
Yep.
Cool. Okay. Well, with that, I think that's everything we have on the agenda.
Do we have a date for the next meeting? It will be September 24th.
I would like to keep the momentum going for the revisions to the exception criteria. So I would like to have September because I would really like to get, if we're going to make modifications, get those done and approved without having it conflict with something that might come in. I just don't want that to happen. So that'd be great.
Thank you.
Mhm.
All right. Any other comments or questions? We adjourn.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. See you later, everybody.